Welcome to a weird place. This is Cozy Corner.
Cozy Corner.
So today we're gonna talk about a game. A game called Clever Grow. It's a game where you play as a dinosaur, as a human. It's a game that passes in a very Jurassic Park style vibe. You are in an amusement park full of dinosaurs. The dinosaurs rebel or escape, and they start to eat all humans everywhere. So this is pretty much the premise of the game. The game is a solo TTRPG created by Matthew Gravelyn. You can play solo with one of these books, or you can play as a two-player game with two books. One plays as the human, this is the human edition, and another person plays as the raptor, this is the raptor edition. The human just wants to survive. They are in a control center in a tower, they are barricaded there, they're trying to survive. The raptor is just trying to have a nice meal. It's a tale of revenge versus a tale of survival. And I need to take this, because this is so hot. Okay, let me take this out. Alright, oh my god, this is so much better. The game is based on a system. It's called Ratchet and Alone system. It's created by Chris Bissett, who created the game The Ratchet. So to play the game, you need a deck of cards. It's like a 52 deck of cards, like this one. You will need a 6-sided die, and you need a tower. A Jenga tower. I don't really like Jenga towers. They're too noisy, too annoying. So I have the fuzzies here with me. The fuzzies is pretty much a Jenga tower that is made of fluffy balls. So yeah, you can just use that instead of using a Jenga tower. On the game, if you're playing two players, they ask you to each have a Jenga tower. I don't know who has two Jenga towers at home. So what we did was we took turns on taking fuzzy balls from the fuzzies, and best of three, that's who gets the tower down. I think that makes sense. The game is played throughout days. On each day you roll a d6. Whatever you roll on the d6 is the number of cards that you pull from the deck. Each card on the deck will have a number and a symbol. So let's say you got a 3 of hearts. You read the 3 of hearts and you read the prompt. Let me read one. The alarms have been going off randomly. You disable the system to get some peace. How does it feel to be more disconnected to what's happening in the park? Pull from the tower. So on this case, yeah, you would write your prompt like, how does it feel to be disconnected? How you feel? Do you feel more alone? Do you feel more relieved? So you write that down in your journal and you pull a piece from the tower. If the tower falls, you die after that. Also, it's good to remember that if you're playing two players, one person rolls the die and pull the cards and you go through the same prompt. Like you don't need to both pull cards or like do two. You go through the same prompts because the prompts match each other on the books. So you go through the same prompts, but as a human and as a raptor, they will be a little bit different. There is 3 ways of losing on the game. If you run out of cards on the deck of cards, or if you pull 4 kings, you also lose, or if you topple your Jenga tower. If it goes down, you also lose. To win the game, there is pretty much one condition. If you draw the ace of hearts, you put 10 tokens on that card, and in the beginning of each day you roll a d6, and if you roll a 6, you remove a token. Some other cards will help you, maybe you roll a 5 or a 6 to remove tokens, but that's pretty much how it works to win. The game is played on several rounds, so you go through several days, and if any of these conditions, if you draw the whole deck, if you draw 4 kings, or if you topple the Jenga tower, you lose. And if you get all those 10 tokens out, you manage to escape. The highlights of the game. I think the fun part is when you pull the same card when you're playing two players and you read the same prompt, but it's the same event through 2 different perspectives, right? And this is really fun to like think how each person sees things. I think this is a big part of role-playing game, right? Like put yourself on someone else's shoes and see through their eyes. So if you're a human, you see things one way. If you're the raptor, you see things through a much more different bestial like version. So for instance, when we were playing, we had a prompt where the human found some gone bad meat on the fridge and say, oh, let me throw to the raptors. They will eat it, you know, they're just animals. They will go for this meat and maybe I can escape. And on the side of the raptors were like, oh, this human just throw us spoiled meat. They are mocking us. So, you know, throughout the raptors, it was like an offense, and throughout the humans was like, oh, I'm gonna trick these raptors to have these two perspectives of one situation. I think this is where the game shines mostly. I think this is really fun, and the game allows a lot of that, a lot of creativity, even though the game is very streamlined on what happens to you. You can always trust humans to come up with interesting stuff, you know, like even though the game is very railroad, they tell you exactly what's happening right now. It's just about how you're feeling about it. And you still can create things. We end up creating a lot of little stories. Like there was a birthday cake that show up at some point, and that birthday cake started to get a really big meaning on our game. And it was like representing the loneliness of this person. They would not eat the cake because they were waiting for someone to rescue them or to come and eat the cake with them. So, you know, this is not part of the game, but we imbued the game with that meaning, which was really fun, and the game allows things like that to happen. I think also the theme of being isolated, especially if you play as the human, is really nice. You're always afraid of these raptors who are coming towards you to get you. Another thing too is the game. I know it's the style of the game. This is the system, right? You have prompts and you kind of just respond how you feel about these prompts. It's very journal based. I'm not a huge fan of journal based. I prefer when there is a little bit more heft on the game. There is a little bit more of a game in there. For instance, like a game that I really like is still journaling, but it's called 1,000-Year-Old Vampire by Tim Hutchins. On that game, you have some agency, and I think agency is really important on a game, that, especially in an RPG, that you feel like RPGs are really about agency, right? It's really about you doing whatever you want to do and accomplishing that. If you're playing a fantasy game, you're like, oh, I want to go jump 10 feet high and cut the face of this dragon. Yeah, you can do that. You can try. That's the beauty of RPGs, right? For instance, in 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, you have agency over your story. They always saying like, oh, write down an asset, come up with an asset, come up with an ally, come up with all these things, and then they come up in the future for you. I think this game would benefit from that. Like, oh, you go to a security area and you find an asset there. You don't need to specify what it is, but it could just be you find an asset, write down this asset on your journal. Let's say now I have flashlights, or I have a pistol, whatever. And then later on the game says, oh, you are faced with the raptors, you try to escape, use an asset to escape, and you can be like, oh, I throw my flashlight at them. And you don't need to pull from the Jenga tower now because you use your asset. So things like that would make the game a little bit more, it would give you more agency like that. Like you would be able to influence a little bit more the story and not just be railroad through one river stream, you know, just keep going and at some point you will die or you will win. I know the game has something like that. There is one card that you can use it to ignore a prompt, but I would love if there is a little bit more moving pieces. Like maybe you have a skill that you start the game and you can use that skill to ignore a prompt or something like that. So there's a little bit more dynamic things to play with. If there was those little things, I think I would feel that is my story and I would come back to the game more. I would be like, oh, I want to try again. Like with 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, you can try so many times. You're like, oh, now I want to be this Greek vampire who come from, I don't know, now I want to be a more like oh, from the Aztecs vampires, and create my story from there. So like it allows that. And I think if that was in this game, like, oh, this time if I go to a place, I'll get this asset instead of that asset, and that will influence how, at least how I perceive the game. I think that would be really fun. Thing that I feel that it was missing on the game, it was maps. I feel that would be really nice to have maps, like just like a basic map of the control center. Because in a lot of moments on the game they say, oh, you don't have access to part of the control center. What part is it and why? And it's like, it would be really nice if I could see something and I could like cross it off, like I don't have access to the recreation center anymore, you know, or something like that. So it really felt that I was like getting boxed in inside this place. I think that would be really fun to have a map of the facility to let me move around or not, because I have no idea how a control center on a park of DinoLand works. So it would be nice to have a visual to help me just get more into the game. So this was Clever Girl. I think it's a really fun game. If you are a fan of Jurassic Park like we are, you can see by these costumes. We had this costume for a long time for a Halloween party. So if you're a fan of Jurassic Park, it's a no-brainer. You're gonna have a lot of fun. But it's also a really good game for 2 players. I think it shines at 2, where you can talk about the prompts, and one person is just a raptor, which is kind of fun and weird to be a raptor. So I think it is really good at 2 players. You can play with your partner, with a friend, and just hang out. It plays in 1-2 hours. You can just chat about the prompts and things like that. I think it's really fun. So yeah, this was Clever Girl. I picked this up at a store called Ratin Cantati. It's like the best store in Canada for zines. You should check it out if you don't know them. And yeah, this was Clever Girl by Matthew Gravelyn. And this is Cozy Corner.
Cozy corner. Cozy corner.
And we are Weird Place. Thank you.